What's up everybody, my name is TJ Hyde, and today I want to make a video talking about the 5 things that you should know before getting into Warhammer 40k. I'm about 6 months into my journey into the 40k universe and tabletop and everything, and I kind of wanted to give some pointers for people that might be getting started, things that I missed when I was getting started. And I will probably continue making these videos as I get farther into the hobby and realize more and more stuff. But at the 6-month mark, I figured that this is something that might help a couple of people out, so let's get into it. First tip I have is Tabletop Simulator is a much cheaper way to look at models, test out lists, and play the game. If you're unfamiliar with Tabletop Simulator, it's a video game on the Steam library that you can buy for about $20-25. And it has a couple of mods in there that let you do basically everything Warhammer. So this is looking at the mission decks, looking at the maps, looking at the models, doing as much as you possibly can in one spot. This is a much cheaper way to get started, especially if your goal is to play. This is a much cheaper way to get into playing. They have super easy ways to build armies, build lists, get everything going using 2 apps that we will get into later. But in general, Tabletop Simulator, it is a massive money saver for testing out your list. If you are trying to buy a full 1K or 2K list, it is a much easier way to look at models, to see what models actually look like. They're not pitch perfect, but they're close enough that you'll kind of get the point. In general, Tabletop Simulator, it's a very good value purchase to get started into Warhammer 40k, and I'd highly recommend it, especially if you have a couple of people to play with. If not, there is a Discord for the Tabletop Simulator Warhammer community where you can find people to help teach you the game, help put lists together, and help find people to play against. Moving on to the second tip, Rule of Cool. You'll hear it everywhere. It still applies. However, do Rule of Cool within your price range. This is something that I experienced. The first army that I wanted to build into was Adeptus Mechanicus, because I found Adeptus Mechanicus to be one of the coolest armies in the game. It is all of the engineers of the Imperium. They are red, mechanical, people that just really don't like their flesh, basically, so they just replace it with mechanical parts. I thought this was awesome, and that was going to be my first army. However, after buying the Combat Patrol and trying to put together lists and trying to figure out how this army is going to work, I realized that if I wanted to continue playing with my friends for the time being, this list was simply going to be too much of a money sink, especially for the income that I have coming in right now, that it probably wasn't possible to finish by the year's end. And it was something that I bought the Combat Patrol for, and then I completely backed out of AdMech entirely because it was just too expensive. So Rule of Cool definitely still applies, but do keep in mind price range, how elite your army is versus how hoardy it's going to be, how much you're going to spend trying to build these lists. I ended up pivoting into a Space Marine army, which wasn't necessarily my first choice, but it's still cool. It's a bit cheaper than the AdMechs were, and it's something that I'd highly recommend. Is just when you're building your lists, look into what is cool, but also put together a list, see exactly how much you're going to be spending before you end up completing this list to a playable point. Third tip, if you are looking into the painting side of things, look into cheap airbrush kits and painting kits before getting started. This is something that I totally whiffed on, completely and entirely. We are 6 months in, and I still have 1 paintbrush, the starter set of paints, and I have not painted any of my 1K point Raven Guard list that I have. Not a single drop of paint on any of them. I have been investing into an airbrush, which, if you are curious, it is the Harder & Steenbeck Ultra airbrush. Because I did a lot of research, I found that this airbrush is going to be pretty good quality and beginner friendly, so it was one that I was really looking forward to. So if you are curious, I do know that this is a pretty solid airbrush. The caveat is it is $120 base. That is not including the air compressor, your paints, or any of the attachments that you need for said air compressor to get this to work. I have been building this up for the last month now, so I got the airbrush and I got the air compressor, which is currently running me a total of just short of $300, and that is without getting any of the tubing, so I can still not use this And then I'm also going to need to go buy paint thinner because I am going to have to use the paints that I have. So look into cheap airbrush kits. I know I saw one at my local Harbor and Freight that is $100 for a cheap airbrush, a cheap compressor, and all of the tubing that comes along with it. And then you just have to worry about paints. Do your research before looking into paints and paint kits. Make sure that you understand that you're not going to start off great. I know I'm not, and this was too much of an investment for me to be on a beginner level for model painting. Fourth tip that I have is there's a couple of different apps that you can use that will completely override the use for Games Workshop codexes. If you don't know, codexes are where you're going to get a good chunk of the lore, which they are still good for that, but it's also where you're going to find a lot of the paper data slates for the units within your army. $60 is a lot to pay for these data slates, and then that's not including still needing to buy mission decks and just a whole bunch of stuff. There's ways to completely override this. There's 3 to 4 apps that I would highly recommend using to override this. The first app you can get on iOS, Android, and on PC. It is called WarOrgan. It is a list building app that stays very up to date with all of the new changes that are made, and I would highly recommend it for building lists. It is super easy to use. You can look at all the different legal kit bashes and everything. It keeps everything within the bounds of what you can legally run with the army that you want to do. So highly recommend using WarOrgan for list building. I recommend New Recruit also for list building, primarily for Tabletop Simulator. If you plan on playing Tabletop Simulator, New Recruit's going to be your go-to because it works with another app called Yellow Scribe, which is less important, where you can essentially attach your lists to your units in Tabletop Simulator, and then you don't have to use a phone or a second monitor to keep pulling up stuff. You can just hover over the model and it'll give you a readout of everything that you need. The last one is going to be Wahapedia. For in-person gaming, Wahapedia is a website that you can use that will give you the entire mission deck, all of your secondary missions, the deployment layouts, everything for completely free, completely randomized, so you can use it all the time for setting up your games and playing them without spending a dime on the mission decks. I understand if you do still want to buy the mission decks, but I know for me, I'm still just on a massive budget. This has been a very slow crawl getting this hobby going, and this is a really good way to save money while still being able to play. The last tip that I have is know what you want to focus on in the hobby. Whether this is going to be painting, whether this is going to be kit bashing and model building, whether this is going to be playing casually or competitive, know what you want to do. Because the more that you know what you want to do, you know where you want to put your money at. This hobby is extremely expensive. I'm figuring it out firsthand, and I have spread myself really thin on all fronts because I do really truly like all of them, but I've found the most fun with painting and casual play. So I've spent more time building lists now on the actual rule of cool, where I am trying to buy more paints and more models that I find really cool that I want to paint, and that is my primary focus. But in the group that I play in, we also have 2 players that are much more competitive, much harder to beat, and they built their lists around that. They have more versatility within their lists. They know how to play their lists very well. They watch a lot of YouTube, and it's been a lot of time investment for them. So that's something where if you want to play competitively, you can start on that now. Play on Tabletop is a great YouTube channel for learning some Warhammer before you get started and learning some strats. And then also understanding if you want to try to get into like the kit bashing, model building end of things, how you're going to go about that, etc. Just knowing what your goal for getting into Warhammer is a really good starting point, because you'll know where to put your money, time, and focus to really get the most out of it. Otherwise, guys, I know it's a pretty short video, but that is all I have for you today. 5 things to know before starting Warhammer. I don't know what I'm going to do for my next video. I've been insanely bored with video games, so I guess I'm just going down the Warhammer tabletop route. But if you want to see more, feel free to like and comment. If you have any input, please do leave comments down below. Things that'll help other players, things that'll help me out as I'm still very new as well, etc. And if you didn't like the video, leave a dislike, and I'd recommend leaving a comment to let me know what I can do better in the future. Otherwise, that's all I got for you today. My name is TJ Hyde, and hope y'all have fun playing Warhammer.